So in this lesson, we're going to be looking at how to add buttons specifically in WordPress, although this can be very translatable if you're using another content management system, right? So the resources that we're going to be looking at is, well, there's three different types of buttons that ultimately we can create. We can just create a simple image that's a button. We can create something that has more of an effect base that's in CSS, and we can have something that mixes the two together by using a plugin. And so in my opinion, the best image base, and these are all button creators. So you actually have an interface that you'll look at to create these buttons, and you can kind of, move things around and things like that. You don't have to know raw code. Is that the button factory is to create actual images. I'll show you very briefly about that. CSS button creator, that's obviously actually getting the CSS code for this, and the Maxbuttons plugin. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to be looking at is actually the button factory, and it's DA then buttonfactory.com. And so the way this works is it's very simple. All it is you can imagine these buttons are just going to be images that we're going to download and upload onto our WordPress website just like we would any other image, right? And we're going to embed it on our website just like we would any other image, but now it looks like an actual button, right? So that's kind of how this works. Some people like it, some people don't. It entirely depends on you. Just very simply, you can, change anything that you want, and it'll be a live editor, so kind of change based on the things that you want, and you can change the different fonts, you can change the colors, things like that. You can output what type of image you want. Do you want it in PNG, things like that, CSS code, image thing, whatever you really want, right? So it's quite robust. It has a lot of power to it. You can change many different things, the gradient, the top color, bottom color, any different types of effects that it may have. The only thing though is this: if it's an image, when you hover over something, right, it's going to be much more difficult to have that effect that you normally would with other buttons that you may think about. Those are all generated through CSS code. And in that situation, well, yeah, one, you can use the CSS code here. Another one that I'm going to be talking about is the CSS button generator. And so all these codes or all these websites are free, so that's one thing that's very good. But same thing with this. This is a CSS button creator, and you can just change many different things, right? You can change the button, you can change whatever the CSS name you want it to be, so it all will be done for you so that everything is very simple. You can make different types of fonts, same thing, borders and sizing, you can make it much more rounded, you can make get a much bigger font, things like that, shadows, text shadows. The only thing that I want to really show you here is when you actually have to get the code, what you're going to do is you're going to copy and paste all this CSS code. If you use a CSS editor in WordPress or a CSS plugin in WordPress, you can just paste it in there, or you'll just enter it in at the very bottom of your styles.css, right? And make sure you can copy and paste this HTML code wherever you want the button to actually show up, right? And the only thing that I really want to mention is this, and this is just very general for any type of CSS code that you add. Always remember this. So one thing that I want to show you is so the one thing that I want to show you is this class name. This is just very general for any type of CSS code that you add, is that just be very wary of this class, right? So when I change the class name here, it edited it for us here, edit it right at the top, and anytime, for example, any of the effects that it has, class name 2 hover, class name 2 active, things like that, right? So just be aware that that is the identifier. So if you have multiple CSS codes, that's kind of how it identifies where does this specific code belong to, right? The class is class name 2, and that's why we named it right here, right? So just be aware of that. That's just anytime you use CSS code. A lot of people, they'll change this, but they'll forget to change some of these ones, and they'll wonder why, for example, why does my button not show up the right way, or why does my image, the effect that I wanted, not show up the right way, right? So these are actual button creators that are used on external websites. In my opinion, they're great, right? They're great, but the only thing is, they're not that simple to use. They're perfectly fine. They're not that hard to use as well, but it could be even easier, right? And the way that I want to do that is with a plugin. And the plugin that we're going to be using is this Maxbutton WordPress button generator. And it has many downloads, 200,000 downloads, 4.6 stars. So it's a very good plugin, right? So what we're going to do is this. So we're going to install the plugin like we would a normal plugin, either on the directory or just in the search. And what we're going to do is, this is a free plugin by the way, you're just going to add a new button. So I'm just going to show you how to make a very basic button, and you can design however you want it to design it. There's many different functionalities, many different options that you can change. But let's say, so this button, let's just say we'll call it the green button because that was the original. That's what the color is going to be. If you want to put a description, we'll just put something. It doesn't really matter. The URL, when the link is clicked, let's say we want it to go to a certain website, and the actual text that you want it to go now. It doesn't really matter. Whatever you want. Open in a new window, don't open in a window. So you can see there's a lot of different options. It makes it a lot more easier. You don't have to know any code. What font do we want? Let's say we want Times New Roman. Actually, no, I really don't like Times New Roman, not for websites at least. Size, let's say we want it a little bit bigger. See, and everything is changed as we go. We can change the style. We want italic or normal. Let's say we want italic. We want bolded words. Shadow offset, we'll see. The thing with this is that I may not know what shadow offset left or top may mean, but we can just change it. We can change it to kind of see what happens when we do changes, right? And in my opinion, there's not much of a difference, so we'll kind of just leave it the way it is. To me, it looks perfectly fine. You can change, how much padding do you want on the top, on the bottom, things like that. Right? For me, I may like smaller buttons, you may like bigger buttons, it doesn't really matter. The radius just makes it more curved, things like that. So let's try to make it much more curved just so you guys can tell kind of what it will look like. If you want to leave the top that way and the bottom a whole different thing, that's perfectly fine. And you can change the colors. There's a lot of different things that you can change. What this is actually showing you is the start color. So what it is when you start, and then or what it is, I guess let me take a step back. What it is when you just look at the button, and when you hover it, that's kind of the color, the blue color that it is at the end, right? And this gradient is just the kind of the start color, and the ending is more on the sides or on the outside, right? So there's many different options. I don't really want to go into all of them, but we're just going to save the button, right? So now what we're going to do is, if we actually want to utilize this button, right, how are we going to do that? And so let me make one edit really quickly. So now we see what that shadow does, right? The shadow offsets the words, and so we can kind of see how that will all work out. So what we're going to do is we're just going to open up a new post, right? We're just going to open up a new post, or one of the posts that we have made previously, and what we're going to do is we're just going to try to embed it in and kind of see what everything looks like, right? So what we're going to do is we're just going to open up one of these posts that we edited previously, and we're just going to edit it. And everything is done through shortcode, so it's very simple just to copy and paste a button. We're just going to have to find what the shortcode is so we can add the button into our website. And if you wanted to add it in a sidebar, that's perfectly fine. In a widget, that would be just as fine, right? And as we can see, the add button is right here, so you very easily just click it and just select which button. If you had more than one button, then you would select those different ones, but you can see this is kind of how it looks. When it's just on its own, that's what it looks like. When you hover over it, that's kind of what it looks like. So just insert the button. As you can see, the shortcode is very simple. It's just the ID number, right? So when we update that, we'll just see what it looks like, and you can just play around with it, make different colored buttons, make different styles, things like that, make them centered, whatever you want to do with it.